My brother announced he sold my farmhouse for $1.2 million at family dinner. The title company called while he was still holding the champagne. I want to tell you about the specific sound a champagne cork makes when it pops in a room full of people who are celebrating something that does not belong to them. I know that sound very well now. It was a Sunday evening in October. My parents' dining room. The crystal chandelier my mother had spent 3 months selecting after my father's business had its first good year. The good china that came out 4 times a year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, and apparently this. There were 18 people around the table. My brother Garrett stood at the head with a glass raised toward the light. "To new beginnings," he said. "The farmhouse sold for $1.2 million. Closing happened this morning." 18 people cheered. I sat at the far end of the table with my fork frozen halfway to my mouth. Let me be precise about what I felt in that moment. Not panic, not rage. Something quieter and more disorienting than either. The specific sensation of hearing your life being narrated without your permission. Of watching a room full of people celebrate an event that has nothing to do with any of them and everything to do with you. My farmhouse. The 1890s Victorian property I had purchased 6 years earlier for $340,000 with proceeds from my third property flip. The one I had spent 14 months and $45,000 converting the original barn into a premium event space. The property that generated $180,000 last year from weddings, corporate retreats, and photography weekends. The asset I had built from a structurally compromised house, and a vision, and an unreasonable amount of stubbornness. "You heard him," my mother said, refilling Garrett's glass with the particular warmth she reserved for his announcements. "He finally sold that old place. Got an incredible price." I set my fork down carefully, the silver clicked against my grandmother's china. "Mom, that's my property. Don't start, Lena." My father's voice carried the edge I had heard my entire life, the one that meant I was making something complicated that didn't need to be. "Garrett's been managing it for 2 years. He put in the work, he deserves the sale. Managing it." That was what they called it when I gave Garrett access to the booking calendar 18 months ago, because I was traveling and needed someone to coordinate vendors on site. I gave him a calendar login and a 15% commission on every event he facilitated. I did not give him ownership. I did not give him authority to negotiate sales. I did not give him anything that could reasonably be interpreted as permission to transfer title on a $1.2 million asset. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand something about Garrett, because this story is not really about the farmhouse. Garrett is 3 years older than me. He is 37 years old. He has launched 3 businesses, all of which failed within 18 months. He has filed for bankruptcy twice. He lives in my parents' guest room, which my mother calls his home office and which contains a gaming setup, a mini refrigerator, and no evidence of any business activity. I do not tell you this to be cruel. I tell you this because my family has spent 20 years organizing their love around Garrett's need for it. He struggled, so he needed more attention. He failed, so he needed celebration whenever anything resembling a win appeared. He was always on the verge of something, always one deal away, one connection away, one lucky break away from the version of himself they had decided he was destined to become. And I had always been fine. Fine meant I did not need the same scaffolding. Fine meant my achievements were acknowledged briefly, and then moved past quickly, because I did not require sustained enthusiasm to continue. Fine meant that somewhere in 20 years of Sunday dinners and family gatherings, my success became invisible in direct proportion to Garrett's failure, becoming the organizing principle of everyone's concern. I had built 7 properties across 3 states. I had built an event planning company that grossed $2.3 million last year. I had bought a structurally compromised Victorian farmhouse and converted it into something that generated $180,000 annually. And my family described all of it as Lena's little projects. My phone buzzed beside my plate, unknown Tennessee number. "Excuse me," I said, standing from the table. The family continued celebrating as I walked into the kitchen. "Ms. Hargrove?" The voice was professional and precise. This is Patricia Huang from Anchor Title Company. I'm the senior fraud examiner on duty. I need to speak with you immediately about a transaction processed this morning involving the property at 4821 Hargrove Creek Road. My farmhouse address. We processed a closing at 10:47 this morning, she continued. During our standard post-close review, our fraud detection flagged irregularities on the transfer documents. Ms. Hargrove, did you authorize the sale of this property? Through the kitchen doorway, I could see Garrett showing my uncle something on his phone. Probably the pending $1.2 million wire he believed was coming to him. No, I said, I did not authorize any sale. There was a brief silence. Ms. Hargrove, someone forged your signature on the deed transfer documents, submitted a fraudulent notary stamp, and filed a fabricated power of attorney to facilitate this closing. We have frozen the wire transfer. I am contacting law enforcement now. Do not alert anyone in your immediate vicinity who may be involved in this transaction. Officers are approximately 8 minutes out. 8 minutes. I looked at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. I could hear Garrett's laugh from the dining room, too large for the space, as it had always been. My brother is in the other room, I said quietly. He's the one who announced the sale. Understood, she replied. Please return to the room. Keep the conversation normal. Do not indicate that anything is wrong. I'll be arriving with the detective assigned to the case. I ended the call and stood in the kitchen for exactly 45 seconds. Then I walked back into the dining room and sat down and picked up my fork. Who was that? My mother asked. Title company, I said. Some questions about paperwork. Garrett's smile flickered. Just once, his jaw tightened for half a second before he recovered. All standard, he said. They called me earlier too, just confirmation stuff. What did they ask you specifically? He paused. Whether everything was legitimate. Routine. I cut into my chicken. Garrett, when you say you managed the property, what did that involve exactly? He relaxed slightly. This was familiar territory. Bookings, vendor coordination, being there on site when you couldn't be. You know, the actual day-to-day work while you were off running your empire. He said empire lightly, but it landed differently. Right, I said. So not the $2,800 monthly mortgage payment that comes from my account. Not the $45,000 barn conversion I funded. Not the $12,000 annual liability insurance. Not the property manager I pay $3,000 monthly who lives on site. The table grew quieter. Someone had to be physically present, Garrett said. You were paid for that, I replied. 15% commission. That came to $27,000 last year. You think that covers? I think $1.2 million for a property you do not own is a significant overcorrection. The doorbell rang. 3 sharp knocks, my mother stood. Who could that be? I'll get it, I said. 2 officers stood on the porch. Behind them, an unmarked sedan. And beside it, Patricia Huang, composed and carrying a leather portfolio. They entered the dining room. The celebration collapsed instantly. Garrett stood slowly, champagne glass still in his hand. The detective identified himself and asked Garrett to confirm his name. My father stood. My son just closed a legitimate real estate transaction. Whatever this is, Patricia opened her portfolio and laid documents on the table. The transaction that occurred this morning involved forged transfer documents, a fraudulent notary stamp belonging to a retired notary, and a fabricated power of attorney. She placed the paperwork in front of him. Garrett looked at the documents, then at me. I had authorization, he said. I managed that property. Calendar access, I said, to coordinate bookings. Property transfer was never authorized. Ms. Hargrove is the sole owner of record, Patricia said calmly. The deed, mortgage history, insurance documentation, and LLC filings are all in her name. Detective Arroyo stepped forward. He read Garrett's full name. He read the charges: wire fraud, forgery, attempted grand larceny, identity theft. Garrett's champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the hardwood floor. My mother made a sound I had never heard before. My father stood frozen, watching the story he had believed about his son fracture in real time. Tell them this is a mistake, my mother said. Lena, tell them. "It is not a mistake," I said. "He forged my signature. He tried to steal $1.2 million from me." They let him out. 17 people remained seated in silence. I gathered my coat and bag. "The farmhouse generates $180,000 a year," I said. "It is the sixth of 7 properties I own. I have never once asked any of you for anything in connection with what I built. Tonight is the reason why." Then I left. The investigation moved quickly. Garrett had not been careful. The notary stamp had been ordered online. The power of attorney downloaded from a free template. The forged signature, described by the handwriting analyst as amateur. He had never believed consequences applied to him. The charges became federal because wire fraud crosses jurisdiction. Browser history pulled from my parents, computer showed searches for deed forgery and notary stamp acquisition. The plea deal was negotiated. 7 years in federal minimum security. Restitution. Permanent federal record. My mother called 12 days before sentencing. "You could speak to the prosecutor," she said. "He's your brother. He forged my signature and attempted to steal $1.2 million, I replied. "Family forgives. Family doesn't forge documents." She hung up. The family divided. I did not attend sentencing. I had a corporate retreat booked that weekend. 40 executives, $32,000 for 2 days. 3 months later, my father called. "When did you buy your first property?" he asked. I told him about the duplex I bought at 22, about living in one unit and renovating the other. "And we never knew. You never asked." There was a long silence. "I want to ask now," he said, "if you're willing." "I am." We talked for 2 hours. The farmhouse had its strongest season yet. 41 events. Revenue of $193,000. The California buyers reached out again with a new offer, $1.4 million. I archived the email. Property 8 closed in December. Property 9 went under contract in February. My cousin Delaney sent me a card thanking me for refusing to make myself smaller. My father and I had lunch twice. Quiet conversations. Real questions. "I thought I was protecting Garrett by believing in him," he said once. "Maybe I was protecting myself." I understood that. My mother and I have not spoken. One Saturday in November, I stood in the converted barn during a wedding reception. String lights glowed against original 1890s timber beams. 120 guests danced under a structure I had paid to preserve. I thought about Garrett, not with anger, with grief for what might have been if love had been distributed differently. He was not a villain. He was the product of a system that told him proximity meant ownership. He believed it, and I had spent 20 years making myself smaller so that belief would not cost me. Until the night it almost did. If you are building in rooms where no one is watching, understand this. Invisibility is not failure. It is information. Information about which rooms are worth your energy and which ones are organized around a story that has no space for you. I built the farmhouse. I built the portfolio. I built the company. And eventually, what I built became impossible to ignore. The band started a slow song. The couple moved to the center of the floor. I stood at the back of the barn. I built and thought about the $1.4 million offer archived in my inbox, the 9 properties on my dashboard, the lunches with my father, and the quiet certainty of knowing exactly what my work was worth. Not the number, this,